Welcome to another episode of Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains. And today we are here at the Superstition Mountain Museum to talk to the director of the museum, Liz Nicklus. And we're going to be talking to her about, she's right there, we're going to be talking to her today about the Peralta Stone maps. Liz, right behind you there are the Peralta Stones, the Peralta Stone maps. I mean, those are the ones, that's it.
Yes, they are the originals right
Okay,
there.
and they've been all over the whole state in different areas and so forth, different museums here, there, and so we're very fortunate to have them here in the museum where people can come and see them. And you told me that they're one of the most popular things here.
Absolutely. We get people that call before they come, are the Peralta Stone maps on display? They get here before they come into the museum. Besides everything else we have to see here, can I see the Peralta Stone maps, but can I take pictures of them? Absolutely, they're there for everyone to see.
So just come on in and see them. Now, probably the most popular second question you get asked is, are the Peralta Stone maps the real deal? Okay, that's enough of an answer right there. I mean, because they do have a lot of history that goes back to James Addison Rivas, the Baron of Arizona, and Crazy Jake, Crazy Jake. We talk about him all the time on the show. He served some time in prison for trying to sell these stones. And you know, there's just all sorts of people involved. I know you're laughing, but there's a discrepancy on how they were found.
Yes.
Now, we've talked with Larry Hedrick on one of those, and we went out and shot the, kind of where the area was that they were found. We weren't sure exactly, but it's part of out there where Queen Valley is now, but Florence Junction, that area. Tell us a little bit about the stones as you know it.
Well, what I've heard is that the Peralta family, they had a rich gold mine down there. At one point, they had to leave. They had to make an escape. The Apache were approaching. They were attacked by a band of Apache. Their burros were loaded up with the stones and with other clues as to where you could find the gold mine. Apparently, they were attacked. Many of them were killed. The burros took off on their own, which is where it gets interesting, because some of the burros took off down to where the Peralta stones were actually found. And they apparently, what I've heard is that they dropped out of the burros' sacks and fell on the ground and were laid there buried until 1949 when they were discovered by whoever discovered them. What most people don't realize is that on the west side of the superstition, some burros may have also escaped that way because other clues were dropped, and those were the stone crosses. Supposedly they held more clues as to where the mine was located. Now, the other part of the story is, and this is what most people aren't familiar with, there's a thing called the Latin heart, which is basically a stone heart very similar to the one that you see back there with all kinds of Latin inscriptions on it.
Let me interrupt you just for a minute. Isn't that the heart that's supposed to go in there, that's supposed to fit in there?
Correct. Now, that was apparently found in the same spot that the original Peralta stones were found. And this is where it gets interesting because I have not been able to find the name of the person who found them. Somebody apparently was down there looking around and there was the heart lying there. So they took it home. That gets interesting too because nobody knows where it is. I have heard from a pretty credible source that the original heart was destroyed. Why? I have no idea, but it was destroyed. Now there are several authors and people that are investigators and Dutch hunters that have copies of the heart, but we're unaware of whether they have an actual clay copy of the heart or whether they just have photographs or sketches of the heart. Those exist. You can see all the Latin inscriptions that are on there.
So there are actual pictures of the heart before it was destroyed?
Yes.
I believe I've seen those.
Yes,
now,
yes.
For a long time, when you would see pictures of the stones, they would have like black tape across certain portions of it. Was there a reason for that?
Not that I know of. I don't know whether somebody was just trying to be mysterious or maybe, though actually there are some areas that I have seen blanked out because they were so worn you could not determine what they actually said. Now supposedly with this Latin heart, if you followed the clues of the Peralta stone and you followed them correctly and you got to where that mine was located, once you were there, you took out that insert, you put the Latin heart in there, and the remaining clues would take you right to where the gold was.
Now, are we talking about the Dutchman's gold or Peralta,
Well,
which
you
is one
know,
and the same in some of the legends.
Exactly. It gets blurred. In my mind, I think they're two separate things. Of course, there are the people that think that Jacob Waltz found the Peralta's gold, so it could be one and the same. I always separate them out in my mind. To me, they're two totally different minds.
Okay, so going back to the Peraltas, did they mine up in the Superstitions? Do we have real proof that they did actually mine up there?
No, we don't.
Okay,
We
so
really don't.
where did this story come from as far as the Peraltas go?
Good question. Good question. I mean, I don't know whether that we kind of backed into that when they said, well, if Jacob Waltz didn't mine that gold, maybe he found the Peralta stash, and the Peraltas were known to be in that area supposedly. Maybe that they said, well, if that's what he found, they must have been mining there, and that's why they found the gold there.
Now, another story is that the Jesuit priests, when they came up here,
Yes.
that's a whole story where they were going to be replaced by the Franciscans and so forth down there.
Right.
So they loaded up burros, brought it up here. Where does that enter into this whole thing? The Stones, do they say they are part of that? Are they old enough? Or
I don't know. That's the other question. Are they old enough? Are they even old enough to be authentic?
well, the thing is, can't they judge whether they've been they're authenticated? I mean, if they were authentic, and I know there has been some testing done on them, wouldn't they be that if they were real, that under the Antiquities Act, that the government could come in and take them?
I'm not sure if they would or not. Again, it's up for grabs. We don't know whether they're authentic or not. I've heard both sides of the story. Yes, I've heard that they've been carbon dated, and yes, they are as old as they say they are. Then I've heard other people say, nope, they've been examined, and all those inscriptions were made with modern tools, so they can't be as old as they possibly say they are.
Evidently, from what I'm told, one of the people that supposedly discovered them was actually back east before he moved out here, was a tombstone engraver.
Well, there you go.
That did it. That's another story.
There you go. There are a million stories.
A million stories in the Naked Mountains, right?
One interesting thing about to go back to the stone crosses.
Yes.
And this is a very interesting thing. Now, supposedly the stone crosses were found in 1983 by a man named Michael Bilbrey. That's documented. He found them on the west side of the Superstitions. Again, they think maybe the burros some took off that way, and they were trying to get back to their stable or wherever as quickly as they could. They fell out there. Supposedly, those crosses were in the possession of the Superstition Mountain Historical Society. Actually, I have proof that they were. We have them listed in our archives, and there are people that said they photographed them at our old location before this building was built. They've disappeared. We have no clue as to where those crosses are today.
What about the photographs? They've disappeared as well?
We have the
You have the photographs.
We have the photographs.
Of the crosses.
And we have an archival record of them. But
so,
they
existed.
Don't have them. They existed.
They existed. Have they been dated as far as where they would come from? Same time period? Or
not that I know of.
Okay. So I guess the question is, you have photos of the crosses, but no tie-in to the Peralta stone maps exactly.
It's the same situation. You have the Spanish and the Latin writing on them, and supposedly they tie in somehow.
Okay.
But who knows?
So it's feasible then that somebody out there has the crosses?
Yes.
Do you have any theories?
No. I would not even hazard a guess.
And where were
they were last seen, from what I understand, up at the old location when the museum had space up at Goldfield Ghost Town.
Goldfield.
Yes. They're entered into our archives. We have photos. We have a description. But we can't find them now. No one can. And believe me, our archivists know everything that's up on that hill.
So basically, from the time that it was at Goldfield to the time it moved here, they disappeared.
From what we can tell.
It gets deeper and deeper.
It gets deeper and deeper. And to be very honest with you, they kind of, it was out of sight, out of mind, until a gentleman came in and said, I'd like to photograph the stone crosses. People that had been here for quite a while said, well, I've never seen the stone crosses. And that's why we did the hunt into the archives and said, yeah, here we go. We had them. He says, I know you had them. I photographed them up at Goldfield.
So
we no longer have them.
We're breaking another mystery right here. The crosses. So the mystery is, and you know, when you think about somebody taking them from that museum before they got here, you kind of think about the suspects.
I'm not pointing fingers at
Yeah,
anybody.
okay. But somewhere they are out there.
Yep.
Oh boy,
Yep.
another mystery of the mountains.
Another mystery
This
opens
is
up.
this is so fascinating. And again, how do they tie in exactly?
The only thing that I can think, again, it kind of blends in with the story, that those same burrows that dropped the Peralta Stones and dropped the Latin Heart, dropped the other burrows that took off in the other direction, dropped the stone crosses at the same time.
Now, was this during the time of the massacre?
Yes.
That we talk about
Yes.
up there, the Peralta massacre?
Yes.
So it was during that time when the Indians just had them pretty much, Native Americans had them boxed in.
Yes.
Wow. Mysteries just keep getting deeper and deeper.
And believe me, I have tried to do my research. I've been doing reading. I've been speaking to people. And again, for every story that says one thing, you'll find another story that completely contradicts it. Very hard to put two and two together.
Now, when you have these stories out there that contradict it, as many of the stories, most of the stories about the Superstition Mountains contradict each other, do you believe, now this is just opinion,
Okay.
do you believe that there is somebody out there that's putting out misinformation so it will lead people away from the truth?
No, I don't believe that.
It's just basically like the circle where you tell a story to somebody, and by the time it comes around, what's that called?
Telephone.
Telephone. And by the time it gets back to you, it's changed completely.
No, I don't think it's intentional. I think that people are just looking for their own clues and they're looking at their own observations because, as you know, most of these people have gone out there themselves and investigated and gone through the records and looked at everything that's available. And I think people are just coming up with different theories. I don't think it's intentional at all.
Wow. So, okay, even if they come up with different theories, I mean, how can they do that when the facts, so to speak, and I'm doing that in air quotes here, the facts are out there and then they just come up with their own theories?
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, you can twist the figures any way you want to come out with the conclusion you want. You know that.
Well, I know that, and that's what makes the area such a mystery, and why it attracts so many people. And here in the museum, you have so much of that history for them to come and see that it opens up other questions. Now,
Well, it does open up other questions, and we like to open up dialogue. People will come in and ask us point blank, are they real? Are they fake? What's the story? We're like, we present them to you. We present the evidence that we have to you. You have to draw your own conclusions. There are books that you can read. We can recommend books. We keep rare reprints of people that were out there, like Walter Gassler. It's up to you to draw your own conclusions.
He's a fascinating character. We'll talk more about on other shows, some of the area where he was. But there are still people around who have a lot of opinions and a lot of history behind them as far as the mountains go, with people who are no longer with us, Tex Barkley and
Right.
Gassler and people like that. And you have some of them talk here at the museum.
Oh, yes. Oh,
And
yes.
so I'm sure you've been able to talk to them about the Stones.
Yes and no. I mean, again, I like to let people draw their own conclusions and do their own research.
But they all have their own opinions.
Everybody has their own opinion.
Okay, and so these so-called experts, and I use the
Everybody's an
term
expert.
expert loosely because when people come up and say you're an expert on something, say no, I'm an expert fan. There's always going to be somebody out there who knows more or thinks they know more than I do. So these people who you have come in, they basically have different opinions.
Yes,
on the
always.
Stones.
And they generally have written books. And, again, it's not just to sell books. I mean, they have theories. They've written them down. They've researched them. And, again, you'll read one book, you'll find out one thing. Then you'll read another book, and it'll completely change your way of thinking because they'll present evidence to the contrary of what the first person said.
Are there any books you can recommend?
We have several that are all about reading the maps and reading the Mexican treasure maps that are very good. There are a lot of different ones. I suggest that people that really want to do research, they come and they buy some of our rare reprints. They're not very expensive. And we keep reprinting them so people can see them. But then you're getting firsthand knowledge of people that have been out there and have talked to some of the original people that were out there before you got a lot of other people jumping on board.
You have a large selection in there for people to choose from.
Oh, yes. Oh,
and
yes.
I'm sure they come to you and ask, well, what's your opinion? Which ones would... So,
And it all depends on what aspect they're looking for with what with what we'll recommend. To
what you'll
them.
recommend. So basically, when they come in here, and I highly recommend it, that they ask you, or one of the docents here, or whatever, what would be recommended? I'm sure you have a list of those.
Oh, absolutely. We ask what their specific interests are. They interested in geography? Do they want to know the history of ranching? Do they want to know about gold mining? What is their interest? We'll point them in the right direction.
Now, that's another interesting thing about those stones is I've read where the rock that was used, the sandstone that was used to make these, doesn't come from this area.
Well, they also say some of the Dutchman's gold doesn't come from
That's
this area,
right.
too.
However, there is an area, I understand, there outside of Superior, where it might have come from, which would make sense because it's close to that area. How about James Addison Revis? Now, where does he enter in this? He stands tall in a lot of the legends.
Well, he was the one that was trying to sell. He was trying to sell land, falsely claiming that it was Peralta mining land and that they were going to find gold if they bought this property. And I think that was completely proven to be bogus. That's as far as what I know about him.
But a lot of, well, not a lot, but a few people think that he buried them. He made them. He buried them so that he could have either himself or somebody find them to prove that he had the claim on the area.
I have heard that, and that makes perfect sense. Of course, again, you get back to the Apache massacre. The Apaches buried them because they didn't want anybody else coming out there and gold mining.
It just all depends on, and that makes sense. However, in today's day and age, have you ever thought about having them authenticated again? Because today there's probably a lot more science out there that could prove one way or the other.
You know what? Would you authenticate the Shroud of Turin? It's the same thing. We don't want to destroy the mystery.
There you go. Whatever the mystery, wherever they came from, they are still part of the mystery. They are still a big part of the mystery. And whether it points you to the gold, so to speak, they are gold in themselves.
Exactly.
And so this is why they are here. And we need to look into the crosses.
Absolutely. That's another story.
That is another story that we are going to look into, and I have an idea where to start.
All right.
All right, so anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I think that's great. I mean, again, we're here, they are here. They are not owned by the museum or the Historical Society. They're on permanent loan from the Mining and Mineral Museum. They've been nice enough to let us display them here.
Okay.
We do have a copy that when we go out to mobile places, to like other shows, we take them out so people that can't get to the museum can actually examine them for themselves.
So you have another copy, replicas of these?
Yes.
You don't want to take those out?
We never. These do not leave the museum, and we actually give very limited access to them. We have many people that are trying to write books or whatever, and we really vet them before we'll allow them to come and have access to them. On occasion, we do remove this for filming purposes, but very rarely.
Okay, so these are all the stones right here.
That's them.
These are they.
That's them. They.
Them they. Now, do you have pictures that people can come into that are in the museum here of the crosses to look at?
We don't. We have pictures in our archives, but we do not have them down here in the museum.
Okay, all right.
I think if we start to examine that further, that might be a possibility, but I'd like to be able to have some concrete information before we start that.
Well, the concrete information is going to be just another part of the myth or the legends of the
Exactly.
There is no concrete information on anything, really.
Exactly.
But they're out here at the museum. You have much more that I'm looking at that's out here at the museum, and people need to come out here and take a look at it. And who knows when we might be out here. Liz, what is your mission statement here with the museum? In other words, what do you want people to take away from their visit here at the museum?
We are actually here to preserve the history of the Superstition area, the whole Superstition Mountain and Wilderness region. No one was doing this before the Superstition Mountain Historical Society formed. A group of gentlemen got together that all had artifacts. They loved the area. They were collecting, and they said, hey, we need a permanent place to show this to the public. It's amazing how many people do not know about this area. Do you know that the Superstition Mountains and the Apache Trail are the second most photographed thing in Arizona? Only in back of the Grand Canyon is the only thing that gets photographed more.
Really?
Yes. We get visitors from all over the world that are fascinated. They're fascinated by Jacob Waltz and the Lost Dutchman mine, of course. But if you haven't been to this area, you should come because it's beautiful scenery, lots of history if you're into that. I mean, we do live demos of old mining equipment here at the museum. We also have buildings that were from the old Apache Land movie ranch. If you want to see authentic buildings, we have those here as well. The whole trail is wonderful to see. And again, get to the trail early in the morning so you can do the whole loop. It takes about 5 or 6 hours, 135 miles, but it's something that you'll never forget.
Oh, absolutely, and I totally agree with you. I mean, my heart is right here, as is the Peralta Stone heart. But we're going to find those crosses.
Maybe we'll find the heart.
Okay, thank you, Liz. It's been a real joy being out here. And thank you all for joining us as we explore more of the mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.